I am Brad Keelor. He is Kshama Roy. Next up on Director's Cut, find out who still packs his lunch every day. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Director's Cut. My name is Brad Keelor. I'm the director of the Geo-Institute, and that is why we call this show Director's Cut. Every single week, I sit down with a different GI member who has so many stories to tell. Some of them are personal, some are professional, but all of them are fun. If you don't know anything about the Geo-Institute, after you watch this today, visit Geo-Institute.org, and there you will find out that we are a technical society with about 12,000 members, most of whom are geotechnical engineers and or geologists, and that we are part of the American Society of Civil Engineers. And if you like what you see today, and it's the 175th episode of Director's Cut, so I think you will. It's a special one. You should click like, subscribe, and get notifications, and we will let you know every time we post something to the YouTube channel. Our guest this week, special guest, he's going to talk to us not just about GI, but also a little Canadian Geotechnical Society this week, coming to us all the way from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, where he is a principal specialist with DNV. It is Kshama Roy. Kshama, welcome. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you for inviting me, Brad.
We're going to have a great time today, just like we do every week. We have 10 questions, just like we do every week, and 2 of those are the same. We start with one of those. Describe your job in 45 seconds.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, 45 seconds would be tough, but yeah, I will try. So I wear many hats. For my full-time job, I'm a principal specialist at DNV Canada Limited. A little bit about DNV. We are like a risk management and assurance consulting firm with over 15,000 employees all over the world. And we have 300 presence in, we have 150 offices in all over the world. That's my full-time job. I'm also an adjunct professor at the Department of Civil Engineering of Memorial University of Newfoundland. I do not teach courses there, but I co-supervise grad students, master's and PhD students. And previously, I worked as an adjunct professor at University of Manitoba and a sessional lecturer at University of Calgary, where I developed and taught new courses like geotechnical aspects in pipeline engineering.
I think being an adjunct has to help with the everyday job, right? Because you see things from a different perspective when you're out working with the students. I mean, how do you feel that it helps you be better at your job?
Yeah, I think that helps me a lot because, as I work full-time in a consulting company, I am a little bit involved in the research, but most of the time I have to do like project works, right? And getting involved by co-supervising the grad students as an adjunct professor in the university, that helps me keep my research ongoing. I am more interested to know like what their problems are, where they're stuck at. Like I need to read, I need to do a lot of like reading by myself, I need to do a lot of dig up by myself. So that really helps me getting deep into the subject, right?
Oh, I like that. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a minute here. But we always have these super challenging questions on Director's Cut, and we are going to lead off with one of these here when we get to these fun questions. And this is the one we teased at the beginning. In an average day, what is your most typical lunch?
Yeah, I think you'll love it. So generally, I bring lunch from home, and my typical lunch pack looks like a little bit of quinoa, a couple of slices of chicken, whether it's grilled or curry, several vegetables, and definitely some sorts of fruits. But fruits. But most funny thing is, my mom prepares and packs my lunch. And you'll be so surprised to hear that. I have explained it to my mom a lot of times. Mom, I'm grown up, and you don't need to do that. But she really loves doing that, and I think I feel great that she does that for me. So
maybe the follow-up question here is, if tomorrow you started packing your lunch every day and she wasn't doing it anymore, what would you do differently? Was there anything else you'd put in there that isn't in there now? Would it be
I would
less
do
healthy?
definitely. I would do things like completely differently. I would not even prepare a packet. I would just go outside and buy it. That's pretty much me.
So that's the most important thing that we took away here is that, moms, this should have been, maybe we should have done this closer to Mother's Day than we did. That's how to keep it healthy is have your mom pack your lunch every day. I like
Right.
that. Now, the third question is always the research or practice question. I said a minute ago we were going to get right back to your research, and you mentioned it right off the top that being out and being in the university and being with the grad students enables you to continue some of the work that you were doing as a grad student. Can you talk a little bit more about that for a minute? And was it a surprise that you kept doing this research afterwards, or did you kind of expect to do it?
Yeah, I mean, like I kind of expected doing it. So I think one of the the one that I want to like talk about is like kind of my PhD research, and then
Okay.
I continued doing that like even after my PhD and even right now. So one of the things like my passion is like sustainable and resilient infrastructure, especially bird infrastructure, right? So like if we look from a high level perspective, what I try to do is like address the impact of natural hazards, like in climate change, by leveraging the soil structure interaction assessment, right? So I've been involved with finite element analysis and soil structure interaction in different aspects, right? And one of the major part that I did is basically proposing an advanced but simplified soil constitutive model. So when you look at like natural hazards, it most of the time it involves large deformation. And when you're dealing with large deformation, you are dealing with post-peak softening. So for example, like so for dense sand, you have friction angle and dilation angle, right? And those are a function of your plastic shear strain and your mean effective stress. So basically what happens, your peak friction angle starts from a certain value, goes to the peak, and then starts reducing with the plastic shear strain, right? Now, if you look at the classical molecular model, they assume a constant value of friction and dilation angle. So they cannot capture the post-peak softening behavior. So what I propose there is basically a modified molecular model that can capture your post-peak softening of friction angle and dilation angle. And that's how you can better model the solid stretch interaction analysis. So I think that's something that I proposed in PhD. And after that, when I came to the industry, I actually applied some of those. So for example, we applied it in the pipelines, we applied it in the wind turbines, like monopiles and suctionation. And right now we're working to apply it in even helical piles as well.
How relieved were you when you started working in industry and you found an application for your research? I mean, I have to think that there's a little bit of terror there every time that you're going to spend all this time working on a very specific problem that's not useful. I mean, how did it make you feel the first time that you were able to apply something you'd worked on?
Oh, it felt great. And to be honest, like, like this is the same question I asked my supervisors on the last year of my PhD. I think it's like a little bit second last year of my PhD. Like, what's the application of what I'm doing here? I mean, and I was lucky like to have like a diverse supervisory team because my main supervisor was from Memorial, Dr. Bipul Halder. Then I have two other supervisors, Dr. Sean Kenny from Carleton University and Dr. Yanmur from Queen's University. And all the time I had a great discussion with them. Every time they talked about the application of my PhD research, right? And looked from a very high level perspective. So I was pretty much lucky from that side that I started thinking about the application even before finishing the PhD. And when I came to the industry and started working on the pipelines, and to be honest, like some of the specifications and some of the companies, they actually used my papers from the PhD. So that gave me like a great feeling. Like it feels like you accomplish something, right? You can actually apply that to the day-to-day work, and it makes meaningful sense.
That's great. And I'll ask you one more follow-up question about this.
Yeah.
Obviously, seismic hazards are a huge problem for the pipeline industry. Is there another hazard that you look at that maybe people don't talk about that much that you feel like is a major threat for the pipeline industry?
Yeah, a lot of time, like coming from the geotechnical background and apply geotechnical engineering pipeline, this is not a traditional route that people usually
Hmm.
follow, right? So I would say like it's same for linear infrastructure, whether it's a road or rail line, that application is probably same. Seismic hazard is definitely one of the critical things, but simple things like landslides, right?
Yeah.
Your pipelines are crossing river crossings, right? A lot of water bodies, right? And a lot of like wetlands, like special type of soil, right? Those are the challenges that linear infrastructure would face, like for example, pipeline will face. And you'd be surprised that there has been some work on the pipeline geotechnical side, but I would say still there are a lot more opportunities for the geotechnical engineers to actively take part in improving some of the pipeline design and integrity assessment.
Oh, I like that. Thanks for that.
No worries.
I always feel like when I'm putting together the questions, if people watch and they pay attention, maybe they have an idea of what's been going on in my life, because that's where the questions tend to come from sometimes. The other day, I couldn't find my checkbook. I only need it like 3 or 4 times a year because it's 2024 and who writes checks anymore?
Right.
But it resulted in this question for you, Kshama. What's the most memorable or important thing that you've ever lost?
Yeah, I think I would be a little bit emotional on that side because I think it's more like a person because I lost my dad in 2009 just before I came to Canada. So that's the most important person I lost in my life. And, like my dad is my idol for sure. And the one important thing about him is like from the early childhood, he never pushed me to become an engineer or doctor. He always pushed me to become a good human being. Like he always said, like, just be a good person. Doesn't matter whether you become an engineer or a physicist or even a doctor, right? So I think that's the most important thing that I lost in my life. And I learned a lot of lessons from him, to be honest.
Well, this is a great place to talk about this then. You and your siblings came up with a great way to remember him. Can you tell everybody a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I think like both my mom and dad, like they sacrificed their almost like whole personal life for us to raise us from the like very early childhood and make sure that we get enough education, make sure that we do give back to the community, right? And as a I wouldn't say it's a give back, but what myself and my sister, my wife, we're trying, like we created a fund that's called Kshama Roy Memorial Fund, and through that fund, we're actually providing the educational cost and the living expense of 7 unprivileged female students back in Bangladesh. So those who are really struggle for their study, that their family doesn't or their family don't have enough money to support their
Mhm.
education. So what we are trying to do, like we're supporting their education, their living costs, so make sure that they have the same privilege that we got, that our parents provided us. And some of the stories like really, really touchy. And I just wanted to share one. There's one girl like who we provide the support for, and she has a dream to become a doctor, right? And she has been trying a lot, and her parents are just farmers and they don't have a lot of money. So they actually started telling her that she won't be able to continue their education. And that's how she reached out to us. And I mean, like, we were trying to help her. We started giving her like full education cost and full living cost for her. And after 2 years of trying, and as you know, in Bangladesh, it's like really, really tough because you are competing with so many students to get into the medical school, right? It's like a really, really competitive one. And after trying 2 years, like last month, not last month, the second last month, she actually called me and said she got admitted to the medical school. And see, you can see that those kind of things that gives you like a fulfilling, right? Like you are actually helping someone who is in need. And I mean, like, we're really proud of that.
That's great, as you should be. And what a cool way to remember your dad and make a big difference in a lot of people's lives at the same time. That was great. Thanks for that story. When I start doing my homework for these interviews, the first thing that I do is usually go to the person's LinkedIn page, and right there it was in front of me, reviewing conference and journal papers. You've been doing this for a pretty long time, actually. It's almost that time. It's almost review season for Geo-Congress, which is Geotechnical Frontiers last year. So this question has many, 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 many Many reasons to be asked. Kshama, why is it important to volunteer as a reviewer for journals and conference papers?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. Uh, I would I would answer it first asking the question like why we write journal or conference paper, right? Uh, I think like we write journal and conference paper just to like on a very high level perspective. We want to make sure that there's advancement of knowledge and science, right? So first of all, by reviewing those, because peer review is a great, I think, is one of the most important processes of making sure that you are advancing your knowledge and science, right? So just by doing those peer reviewing process or by just helping those peer reviewing process, you're actually doing that part. Like that's the long-term benefit if you look at it. Like you are a part of the advancement of science and engineering, right? But there are some other benefits as well. For example, like if you are a researcher on a certain topic, right, you get to know like what is happening all over the world, like what are the other researchers doing, what are the cutting edge research on that topic and ahead of anyone else, right? Because it generally takes like, for example, a journal paper to be published like 2 years easily,
Yeah.
right? And you get to know what is happening just before 2 years. So if you're excited about your topic, you're excited about your research area, this gives you like a thing out of the time, right? And especially for young professionals, I think this also looks great on your resume because if you're a young professional and you mention that, okay, I reviewed like 10 to 20 journal or conference papers, that gives your technical manager a sense of feeling that this person is passionate about his or her work, right? And he or she likes to give back to the community. So that gives a kind of assurance to me as a technical manager, for example, that, okay, this person loves his work or loves his or her work, and he and she has a belonging to his work, right? So I think that's another benefit for a young professional.
I love that. And the other thing I love about this is if I ask this question to 30 different people, I mean, they might come up with some of the same things, but everybody has different reasons why they do it, which is fantastic. But fundamentally, it's always as a way to give back to the community, help with the peer review process, and help others. So that was a great answer. And of course, I said you can go to geoinstitute.org and you can volunteer to review conference papers. All you have to do is put your name on a list. Odds are pretty good you're going to get a call. So it's that easy. And we thank you for all the papers that you have reviewed, Kshama. It makes a big difference every year.
Thank you.
The other question that we ask everybody when they come on Director's Cut is, how did you first get involved in ASCE and GI?
Yeah. I think like I have been following Geo-Institute and the ASCE like right after I came to Canada in 2010. Slowly, I started getting more involved in Canadian Geotechnical Society, which is CGS, and then I was extremely following the ASCE Geo-Institute as well because like both of them are doing great works on the geotechnical side of it, and I was mainly involved as a student. But I think that my first active involvement was actually being a reviewer of the geo-congress papers. So that was my first active involvement. Like I reviewed, I think, a couple of papers in geo-congress, and then I forgot the other conference name, but yeah, I also reviewed the papers in there as well. And as you can see, like the most important thing, or like most, I think most, how do you say, like the thing that I can still remember is that the bubblehead of Cultridge, right? As you can see here, I actually have it on my desk. So I became a member of 96 Club, and then I started contributing to ASCE and GI, and I got the bubblehead right on my desk. So, and it's so interesting because most of the time my colleagues come to my office and they see like and they ask me this question like, who's this guy? And then I got all the opportunity to explain who is Cultridge.
It is really fantastic. I had somebody recently look at one and say, is this really a real person? And it does give you the opportunity to spread the gospel, I guess, if you want to call it that, of Carl Terzagian of geotechnical engineering. So that is fantastic. As you mentioned a moment ago, you immigrated to Canada in 2010. And I think for those of us who live in North America, without even realizing it, we have a lot of stereotypes about where we live, and we think we know everything about it. Sometimes it's really amazing to hear what the rest of the world thinks about us before and after they get here. Kshama, what was the most surprising thing to you about Canada when you arrived?
Yeah, that's the funny thing. Like being in Bangladesh and seeing a lot of Hollywood movies, right? When I got admitted to the Memorial University of Newfoundland, by the way, it's the easternmost province of Canada, Newfoundland and Labrador. And when I started flying, the first time fly to Canada, I thought it would be like so many high-rise buildings, right? Like it's like Las Vegas or like in New York City, right? But when we landed in St. John's, which is the capital city of Newfoundland, I was like so shocked. Is this the really North America? Is it really Canada or like they brought me in some wrong place? Because like there was like I think St. John's has only a handful number of high-rise buildings, and most of
Yeah.
the time it's like the wooden houses, one story or two story. So that was like very surprising for me when we first landed.
So what was your favorite thing about St. John's? I mean, I mentioned this before we recorded. A lot of Americans, a lot of Canadians have never been to St. John's. It's remote, right? When I fly there, you fly from DC to Montreal and then you go straight east for like 800 miles. What was your favorite thing to do in St. John's, and just your favorite thing about being there?
Oh, I love St. John's and I love Newfoundland. I think if you mention like one thing to mention, I think St. John's has the most sweetest people I've ever met. So I mean, like they were really welcoming. And some of the things like I was so surprised, like the amount of help that they offered. I mean, from like immigrant people, like to people of different color. I think that was amazing. I mean, like I live in Calgary. Calgary is a great city. Like there's a lot of multicultural people, but I didn't expect that being in an island in Newfoundland in St. John's, right? So I think like they are the sweetest people, and I really miss the people there.
Oh, that's a good answer. But St. John's is amazing, and if anybody
It
gets the
is.
chance to go there, I would highly recommend it. It's
Yes,
beautiful, it's fun, the weather's not super hot, so make sure you prepare for that. But other than that, it is fantastic.
it is.
So at the CGS annual conference last year, so our advertisement here should go first. The Canadian Geotechnical Society has their annual conference every fall. This year it'll be September 15th to 18th, I think, in Montreal. Last year was in Saskatoon at the beginning of October. I was so excited to find out that in Saskatoon there was going to be a geo wall competition. It was totally different than the one we have at Geo-Congress. Kshama, can you tell everybody how it was different and then tell everybody a little bit about the student competitions that happen at the CGS conference?
Yeah, sure, certainly. I think like you are probably the luckiest one because last year was the first time we actually hold like a geo competition, and it's a little bit different, I think, from the Geo-Institute one because the way we actually renamed it is basically Canadian Geotechnical Student Competition. We call it a CGSC. The idea behind this is like, yeah, we can organize GeoWall, but we can also organize other competitions as well. So basically, this is a venture by CGS Young Professional Committee and CGS Student Chapter together. So for example, let's start with the GeoWorld first. Like last year, what we did, like we provided like a specific box, sand and newspaper for geosynthetics, and you will get like specific amount of this material. And if you want to use more material, then your point would be deducted. So that's how like it started. And the way that we marked or like chose the winner is basically with 4 criteria: the highest wall you can make, the number of newspaper that you use, and really the strength, like both from serviceability side of it and also like the failure side of it. And that's how we marked all of them. And I mean, like for the first competition, which was super successful because we got 7 teams coming from different parts of Canada. So it was fun, as you have seen, Brad. But interestingly, like this was chosen by the student chapter, by the local student chapter itself. So for example, this year we are doing it in Geo Montreal, and the Montreal student chapter came up with an idea. No, we don't want to do Geo Wall, but we want to do a slope stability challenge, right? And because I'm the chair of the CGSN professional committee, and I have like other team members who help me in running these as well. So they came up, okay, yeah, that's a fantastic idea. We don't need to do GeoWall every year. Rather, we can switch it to a different competition. So the same team members who participated last year, they can come this year as well and participate in a different competition, right? So it gives you like a little bit of diversity in the competition as well. And also like it's always fun to like make those competitions, right? Making those judging rules, making those like parameters, like prototype scales sorts of things. So I think that's how it's a little bit different than ASCE Geo-Institute. Like every year we do it on a different competition. Not necessarily it needs to be a different competition. It can be GeoWall again next year, but it's basically defined by the local student chapters. So it's defined by the local students themselves, because they're, at the end of the day, it's their competition, right? They want to come and have fun with it.
Oh, that's amazing. So you heard it here first, everybody. You should come to Geo Montreal this September. Check out the slope stability competition. It'll be the whole conference will be a lot of fun, but the student competition will be a lot of fun, and everybody will enjoy that. Now, we have 2 questions left, and this one I had to put in here again because Americans know so little about Newfoundland. But you're now in Alberta, so we're going to ask a little bit of a double question here. First part is, what was the most interesting geotechnical issue or problem that you saw in Newfoundland? And then let's talk about the most interesting one that you see in Alberta.
Yeah, I think there are like many geotechnical issues in both of the provinces, and like probably more unique to both of the provinces. For Newfoundland, I think it's more like an offshore soil, because like there's a lot of offshore development in Newfoundland because we are in the easternmost province. We are surrounded by the ocean itself, so a lot of offshore soil stuff, right? Like a lot of offshore soil challenge. Like if you want to build a pipeline, if you want to build a offshore wind turbine, like how the soil would behave, like the marine soils, like at different levels of water depth as you can go. So that's like I think that's a unique problem compared to Canada, because the Vancouver is the other part of the closer to the ocean, right, and then St. John's. So St. John's has the Atlantic Ocean, so that's like a different sort of challenge, a different sort of waves of Atlantic Ocean. And on the Alberta side, I think definitely there are many challenges, but the one I really need to mention is basically the organic soil, which we locally call it as muskeg, which is nothing but a organic soil, and like some people call it as a wetland as well. It has different names, and I found this challenging, particularly for pipelines, because in Alberta has a lot of pipelines, as you know, it's like an oil and gas hub. So the pipeline crosses a lot of different soils, right? And yeah, ideally it would be great to avoid muskeg or like organic soil, but pretty often you won't have the choice, right? So you need to go through those. And basically for a pipeline, you need the strength of the muskeg, right, to properly design it or properly assess the integrity of stuff as well. And that makes things complex, because organic soil has a very unique behavior, because it's like, it depends on like how much water is there. And basically it's like always watery sorts of soil, right? So this is a very complex soil. And interestingly, there is no guidelines that I am aware of that kind of gives you like an idea, like when your pipeline is crossing the muskeg soil or organic soil, how you actually going to define it, right? So I know there have been some research taking place on that topic, but still there are a lot of opportunities in there. And I think this is really unique, and this is so challenging that that's not straightforward. Like you can define a friction angle and or underinsurance strength of clay for your organic soil. It just depends on so many different parameters.
Both excellent summaries of the issues in both provinces. It's fantastic. I hope that there's probably a lot of Americans who weren't familiar with either one. So thank you for going through those. That was really good. We have one final question, and like I said, I always try to think of ones that I've never asked anybody before, and I think I got them all this week. We did an okay job here. So you've been in Canada about 14 years, established career now, PhD. For you, if you think back to the person you were before you moved to Canada, what words of encouragement do you have for grad students or young researchers that are looking to move to the US and Canada to further their careers?
Yeah, I think that's one of my favorite questions, to be honest. Like, and I have like 1 hour slides for that. I can talk about hours on that, because I do present on this on different universities as well, because I love that one. But I think I would summarize from a high level perspective. So as you know, like I believe in humanity and I want to build a compassionate network of similar people, right? So to those like who are like listening to these or like kind or these kinds of interest you, I have like 3 strategies that I recommend to you. Like the first one is like really connect your long-term goal with your core values, right? And it's important to know like what's your core values are. For example, like success is a different definition to different people. Like for me, like I won't think myself successful if I become a CEO or a VP of a company, right? Yeah, definitely that's a success, but I wouldn't consider that as a successful life for myself, right? What I would consider is like people will remember my work even if I'm not here, right? That would define success. So that's related to your core values. So you need to figure out like what you want to be or what's like your core values, right? And then you should relate your long-term goal to your core values. That's my first strategy. Second thing is really break down your long-term goals into short-term tasks. Like I'm not mentioning short-term goal because I think, like to my opinion, that your short-term goals can change as you gain more experience, as you progress through your career, right? But I would define it as a short-term tasks. For example, like just reading an article, right? That is very interesting to you, that is close to your core values, or that you can relate to your long-term goal. That might take 5 or 10 minutes on a daily basis. That you should focus on as a simple task, and probably reflecting on what you are doing, right? So even every day for 5 minutes, like taking a coffee and think about like, okay, this is my long-term goals, this is my core values, and this is how I'm progressing on a daily basis. I think that would be my second strategy. Really break down your long-term goals into short-term tasks, and then make sure that you progress on a daily basis. And the third one, which is the most interesting one, and I think we most often struggle with that, is don't stuck with the messy middle and think from a high level perspective, because like most of the time we have like 1 or 2 productive, like bad days, like non-productive days, or even 1, 2, 3 weeks non-productive days. But everyone goes through that, right? And you don't need to be stuck on that, because that's part of your journey as well, right? As long as you have a lesson learned from those 2, 3 days or 2, 3 weeks, that's okay. And if you look from a high level perspective, like those 2, 3 days or 2, 3 weeks, it's almost like a negligible fraction of your whole career, whole life, right? So pretty often we got stuck. We got stuck on certain things, like it's called like a messy middle, and then we started changing our goals. We started changing our core values, but I think we should not do that. Like if you have a defined long-term goal and core values, you can have like 2, 3 bad days, and that's okay. You just need to continue and think about it from a high level perspective. So I think that's the little bit of change in mindset that's needed here. Like thinking from a high level perspective, like where I'm going to be and how I am going to be there.
That was really good. I kind of want to see the 1-hour presentation now, because that was good. I like that. Solid points, fantastic advice. Kshama, you made it through all 10 questions. You did a great job, and I always say everybody makes it through all 10, but it is still an impressive achievement, right? And for our viewers, if you liked what you saw, and you're here at the end, so you probably did, of course, click like, subscribe, and get notifications, and we'll let you know every time we post something to the YouTube channel. We didn't have a special intro or wrap up for episode number 175. I guess the next time we'll do that is for 200. But it is still a nice round number, and I kind of can't believe that we made it to 175 episodes, so woo! Kshama, thank you for doing this. I hope it was fun.
It was fun, and thank you for inviting me, Brad. I really appreciate that.
Of course, and for everybody out there in viewer land, we're getting really close to June. Only a few more episodes of Director's Cut before our summer break, so you'll make sure you want to stick around for those, and we will see you with another brand new episode next week.